Hello and welcome. This is Kevin, also known as AKAAWOL. Wait, that's not a chapstick holder. Okay, so for you out there who want to try to make things like I did, this is the Kumi setup that went into this project. There is 48 strings, which is twice as many as that previous blue and yellow one that I did, the double wide. So, and here's, so 48 strands, right? So then you end up with like so much string on either side. So we're going to have to speed this thing along. Otherwise, we could literally be here for hours. Well, longer than 4 hours, but, you know, for hours, right? Anyways, so there you can see I did the little clip to the one side. And you can see how I brought the first one all the way down. And the second one bounces back. Then the third one bounces back. And they all do this. So this is really quite similar to that double wide that I had. Mind you, that went out in the mail. So, yeah, that was a winner to one of my Patreons. So congratulations to that person. But what we have here is, instead of trying to make it like exactly how I did that double wide, I've created one giant bit that will have, basically, you'll end up with two of the smaller sets of diamonds running down, one on the front and one on the back. So it takes up relatively the same kind of space as how I did that other double wide. But this is actually much faster, because when you start to take to working on one side or the other, it has a much easier flow to it. And you can kind of see it right here. Like, that's just, it just moves along. And it's really easy to do, because you can just kind of follow each one. It does its thing. And you could kind of see how when it joined together. So basically I had one great big flat diamond until I rolled it together and it went like this. Now, mind you, what we're dealing with here is early in the morning, I like to wake up and I like to see what kind of comments I got over on YouTube. And somebody had asked a question in regards to something. And because I was groggy and I had stuff in my eyes, I thought they said a chopstick holder. And immediately my mind went, wow, that would be really great. I'd love it. It turns out that after I woke up and got myself kind of, where the sleep out of the corner of my eyes was gone, it was a chapstick holder. I'm like, oh, I guess that's cool too. But since I was already kind of, like all excited about this, I went ahead and I made it. Now, you can see there are 4 strands of hemp coming out of it now. What I did was, on one of those downward strokes heading to the middle, I stuck that in there, and now I have to keep working around it so it stays out of my way and well, it wasn't quite to the middle. That right there just put it in the middle. Keep it out of my way until I was ready to actually knot that thing up. And what that became is a button type setup to keep this thing closed while it's floating around in my backpack. Really fond of the whole chopsticks things. I think I mentioned this before on this channel about how, like, if I'm eating popcorn at a movie theater, chopsticks will keep your fingers from getting all buttery and salty and stuff. So, and that's especially great if you're like sitting around the desk and stuff, but then you really don't need a chopstick holder at your desk. So it was more, really, this is really more about the challenge of it. And my thought was, because chopsticks are so long, that it's much longer than a bracelet, and I wouldn't want to have to necessarily add strings like I normally do. So I concocted this idea. Mind you, I don't do alphas typically, right? I really don't think I've really played much with it other than just to see what the concept was about. But my thought was, if I brought the pattern down and then started going around it in an alpha style, maybe I wouldn't have to add as much string, or if I did add to the string, it would somehow be different. Well, it turns out if you have like 48 strands coming down, which I'm pretty sure it's 48. Look in the comments. I will double check that just to make absolutely sure. But anyways, it turns out that if you go around, it uses up string pretty quickly. So I went through probably 5 or 6 skeins of black. I was going to add the dark blue, but it turns out I was completely out of that. So black just seemed like a great neutral color, and it would be kind of fun and neat. So so there you can actually see those hemp strings coming out. And like I said, they kind of seem like they're in my way at this point, but it's not so bad. Oh, and right there you can see I tried to put something inside of this to make it easier to kind of rotate, and it turns out there is nothing makes this thing easier in regards to that. I couldn't find anything that size, and for the most part, I have to say that I probably I don't know. I went without anything in there. Oh, okay, wait. So that first orange one, you can kind of see I kind of went to where it ended and then sort of did a right then a left knot to kind of make it leaves like a little hole in it. But then I tried something else right here. See, I just kept going. And turns out that if you just do the whole keep going thing, it is way more noticeable in the aftermath. So what I think the trick to this is you go all the way around, and when you get to the next one, like where the blue meets the blue, you have to go a right, then a left, and then drop down to the next one down, and then do a left, then a right, and then continue going to the right. And you can clean up how that join goes, because that light blue join, I don't know, I just think it seems like it's really conspicuous. And by the time I get down to where I would do a bunch of the orange, and then I switch over to the black, it becomes really, you can see exactly where it is. And I think it'd be a lot more fun if maybe it didn't. So I'm already taking ideas for doing this in a bag. I'm not sure. I don't think I was going to order string specifically for that purpose. And I'm not for sure that I actually have that in this order. I have like 8 kg of string coming, and isn't it weird to think that like, oh, I have all this string, but I might not have what I need for a project? So weird. Anyways, yeah, so you can see, like I just did I pulled these strands out of what was already in there. So I could have probably have continued with that kind of line of thought and kept going down for a while. But I was using up strings so quickly. I was concerned on how that was going to actually turn out. And again, chopsticks are really, really long, right? So it came down to getting more strings out of the box and working that out. And again, see, I just moved straight across there, and it leaves a spot where the two come together. I really want to improve on that, and I'm sure I know exactly how to do it. And hopefully you guys are understanding the description. But like I said, I really am not an alpha person per se. And the idea of doing an alpha in a tube is not something I typically see. So I'm sure probably somebody's done it somewhere, somehow. But this is a little bit new territory for me, and I think it's going to be kind of fun to sort of play with the notion and see what can come of it. And one of the benefits is when you do that ring, you can tell like I was taking from completely different areas for the next row. So what I think you could do is as long as you have all of the colors you want, you can then, when it comes to these rings, put them in any sequence you're looking for. So here it is. I'm going to add some string. I've done half of the knot, and then I slide the string up, and then I do the other half. mind you, because I do it doubled up, it allows me to have like a loop there. So now I do half the knot, and I put the long one through it and do half the knot again. Because I'd like to give it like a nice secure start to it, right? There's half the knot, over it again. And then what I'll do is that little piece that's left over, and mind you, look, that was a whole third of a skein, and it only made a couple rows. And I kind of maybe might have been my second one before I just thought, oh, I should teach how I do this. So yeah, see, that's what, like 4 times already. But because I do it like this, and then I anchor in that tail really well, I'm able to snip it right to the edge. So rather than like some of these, I see people who do the alphas and the whole back of it is like completely chaotic. I thought that would be really a bad idea for something I'm going to try to slide chopsticks into. So if you can imagine, see how that little tail is being kind of woven into the center of these knots. And if you give it a good snug, pull on that, they just kind of disappear. And then, I just kind of flip it open, I have these really nice small scissors that are perfect for cutting and not, kind of being precision about it. And I just snip it off like as flush as possible. And it doesn't cause any trouble whatsoever when it comes to sliding the chopsticks in or out. So hopefully that inspires some people to come up with some neato ideas. This work really was about, like you can see here, I had to flip the whole thing over and clip it down again. There was a lot of that going on, man. It really felt like I was spending the majority of my time rotating it as opposed to just doing knots. Mind you, doing the knots was relatively quick. I could move along because it's a steady thing. I'm not having to stop and find which is the next string to come down. So that part's relatively cool. It just would have been nice if I'd had like a dowel or something that I could have put in there just to make it so that way it would almost like auto rotate for itself. So if you're going to make something like this, I definitely probably would start with that first. Just go down to your craft store, get a wooden dowel that is about the size you want to make it around, and then work it from there. I think it would go a whole lot faster, especially if you plan on making like a few of them. You want your shop to have this kind of stuff. That's definitely how I would do it. Mind you, at the end of the day, I'm not sure like how easy it would be to clean this thing. Like if you're out and you use your chopsticks. Oh, here I am changing the colors. So yeah, I mean, could I put it through the wash? Maybe, but then I got that button on there, and that button's made out of like porcelain or something. So maybe I'd have to change that up if I was going to use it for being out. All right, so here's where I begin adding the black. And this is the blatant, obvious, one color stops and the other color begins, and it just eats away at me. I'm such a perfectionist. It just drives me insane. And because I don't have anything stuck in here, that kind of slows me down because I have to make sure that the string I'm picking up isn't accidentally the one from the other side. Because if you do, you will put a stitch going through this thing, which kind of, it just will make things really difficult. I can't describe it very well, but it would be a bad move. So yeah, just kind of watch out for that. Take that into account when you're making yours. I have to say, overall though, I really do like some of the aspects of this project, and I will definitely be exploring some of those aspects in the future ones. As far as like this adding string thing, this is exactly how I would add string on a normal bracelet, except it would be coming down on a diagonal as opposed to being a horizontal add. So, and I think that once this is seen by some of you, I have a feeling that if you've done alphas or if you like the idea of an alpha, I think this might work out really, really well for you, especially if you're doing it like an alpha with like limited colors, being the ability to have one running on the inside and then being able to pop it out when the pattern calls for it. I think this would alleviate some of that mess in the back and give you a different alternative way of going forward. So if hopefully that's a thing. Also, if you are going to so I try to taper it in. If you try to do that, you want to do one knot over the first one, the string that you're keeping, and let the other one go to the inside. Otherwise, you'll have little spots that will kind of pop up and become visible. So, and you might be able to see that in the final project. But that was something I learned as well. Like I said, a lot came from this project. I'm really excited to have misunderstood something, and I really kind of hope that we can explore a lot more possibilities. So if you can think of anything that would be really fun to have a cylinder of, leave that in the comments. Let me know so we can come up with more projects along this line. I think for sure my little mini bags, the ones for just carrying your ID and some money out, I think that's going to definitely be a thing. But if you got anything else, give me a holler and let's do that. All right, there it goes. Okay, so here we have it. I tried really, really hard to pull it inside out to put the knot on the inside. What I found was that because I had been tapering this in, and I'll explain how I did that, but because I tapered it in, it absolutely was not going to go very easily to turn it inside out. And then my concern was once I got it inside out, getting it back to being right side out might have been an absolute nightmare. So I decided that it was just best to do this. And all I did was I just basically brought the whole string around and put it through this way. When you do this, I find that you then want to go through and just pull every strand individually and just tug it all really nice and snug, and it'll make for a much, much cleaner knot right there. Okay, so tapering in. What I did was, if I was tying a knot, and I did it, try to do it like kind of systematically. So up here, there were colors that kind of came together. So if the two yellow ones, bright yellow, had come together, I was just removing like those colors, like just go one knot over two strings, and that's obviously makes it a little bit smaller, and then cutting it out. Now, these two little dots right here, can I zoom in on that? Can you see that? Hang on. See if I can get more light here. Okay, so this little dot here and here was I cut off the string and then went along and just continued my knots, and you can see it left a little whatever. I found if I tie over two of them, and then the next round I tie over just one and let the other one go to the center, I could then go in and I could snip it on the inside. Now what that did was, though this is basically, it's an alpha type design, I had the entire inside of this is very smooth. Even where up here where I was changing up the colors and stuff, there is no like chaos. I wish you could see inside of there. You really kind of can't. But there's nothing inside of there. So it's really super smooth, and you can just drop the chopsticks in there. So that's what the intent of this whole thing was, is, be able to carry my chopsticks. I kind of just found myself wanting to get these strings out of my way. So all this is just a square knot. Your typical simple macrame square knot. I had 4 strands, 2 strands going up the middle. When I got it long enough, I tied it in a knot so that way I could put on this little, I think this is supposed to be a pig. It's really cute, which is perfect for me. I'm supposed to be dieting, so if I'm pulling out my chopsticks, I need to be reminded like what a little piggy I am. So, and then to make sure it didn't come sliding off, I have this little bead here, and I took and tied the string. I got the string to go through the bead, and then tied it, and then tied it off again. So I really don't think that's going to go anywhere for anytime soon. And then I can put the bead up through this, kind of pull that down, and then that can go in my bag. And I saved this for now to do. When I have a tassel like this, what I personally like to do is I like to kind of cut it at an angle. It's just a personal thing. I mean, you can do it however you want to do it. I like to do it at an angle. I think that as this starts to get more frayed, and I might even just help that along by actually pulling out all the little individual strands. I just think it gives it a better look overall. If you cut it straight across, it just seems, I don't even know how to describe that. It's just a thing. What did I learn in this? Well, first off, I can tell you that my regular knots going into an alpha, it got wider. And that's kind of what actually inspired me to actually taper it in, was because I kind of felt that it looked already like a bit like a pencil skirt. And that as it got wider here, this is sort of like the hips or whatever. And since it was just meant to be chopsticks, that was sort of, I was like, yeah, it could be a lot smaller. I still have room. I can actually fit like a fork and a spoon up in here. But since it wasn't really intended for that in the first place, I think it might be a tight fit and a little bit difficult to get out. My biggest thing with the chopsticks and having it portable is like maybe going to a movie theater or being somewhere where I don't want my hands to get messy from like chips or popcorn, that kind of thing. So yeah, whatever. Like I said, this whole thing really came about from misunderstanding somebody's comment. They said chapstick. I thought they said chopstick. So there it is. I mean, I really liked the project. It was a lot of fun. It was something new to try, and I kind of look forward to having some more projects like this. I mean, I'm not sure. Well, I definitely already have a plan for doing an alpha style bag that's I have the string actually already ordered. I have like 8 kg of string coming. So when that gets here, that will be something I can play with. But yeah, I mean, if you guys have any thoughts or questions, please leave it in the comments, and we'll see what else we can come up with, right? Oh, something to note. Because there were 48 strings just going around, like 2 rows or so was like a third of a skein. So if you think about making something like this, just be warned, it is pretty string intensive. I think that for the black here, I think I used 5 or 6 skeins, or possibly a little bit more. I kind of lost track of it. And that was also had a lot to do with why I started to taper in, was because the fewer strings coming down, the fewer knots to go around, the further you can get with one string. So, yeah, just a heads up. This was pretty intensive, and it took a lot longer than I thought. So, those videos that I didn't get in, yeah, it was because I was working on this, and yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare for a bit there, but I got through it, and yeah, until next time, don't get your strings in a bunch.